This video gives you an introduction to flowcharting, some decision structures, some simple ones as well as some that may have more than one case. So some things that we've already done so far. So if we review, so what do each of the following symbols represent? So if you remember back from the previous programming assignment as well as the other flowcharting lesson, you remember that this is a terminal for a start and an end. This represents the input and output operations. This would represent a process, so something like a calculation. And then this is a connector. So if your flowchart gets too long for the page and you need to do another vertical continuation of your flowchart, you would use a connector. There are 4 flowchart structures. One we've looked at already is a sequence. Today we're going to look at decision as well as case. So a simple decision and then a case where you may have more than one possibility. And then in the next unit, you're going to look at repetition. A review of a sequence structure. This is a series of actions that are performed in sequence, so one after the other. So the pay calculating example was a sequence flowchart. If you're using a decision structure, so there's one of 2 possible actions to be taken, which depends on a specific condition. A new symbol, which is a diamond, indicates a yes or no question. So if the answer to the question is yes, the flow follows one path, and if the answer is no, then the flow follows another path. In the flowchart segment below, the question is X greater than Y? This is asked. So if the answer is no, then the process A is performed. If the answer is yes, then process B is performed. And your process A or process B may be made up of more than one different flowchart structure. You may also need to put in another decision structure. So if your decisions are, there's a tree structure that you have some inside, if you have them nested, then you may need to put more decisions inside the yes or the no categories, depending on what your program is doing, what your expectations are. So when we take a look at this one, so the flowchart segment below shows how a decision structure is expressed. So what would this look like in the code? So we have a decision where is X greater than Y? And if it is, then the difference would be X minus Y. And if it's not, then the difference would be Y minus X. And you can see that match up with the flowchart. So the yes action will be taken inside the if statement itself. Okay? If this is not true, so if X is not greater than Y, then we'd go to the else, and then the no decision pathway would be followed. And then the program continues on after this block of code here. So whatever comes outside the else, if there's something else happening or if that's the end, it will continue on in your flowchart. The flowchart segment below shows a decision structure with only one action to perform. So it is expressed with only one process. So is X greater than Y? If it is, then we'll calculate this difference and then it continues on with the program. If not, it doesn't actually do this calculation. So this process, or this decision, if the answer is no, then it continues along. Okay, on to the next section of your program. For a case structure, so something like an if-else if there's one of several possible actions to be taken depending on the contents of a single variable or of a variable. So in this case, we're checking for the years employed. So if years employed is equal to 0, then set the bonus equal to 0. Else if years employed is equal to 1, then set the bonus equal to 200. Else if years employed is equal to 2, then set the bonus to be 400. And then there may be an else included in your if-else if. So then set the bonus equal to 800, and then the program will continue running. So this would be your different ifs and else if parts. If you're doing a subprogram, now you need a program module, such as a procedure function, to be represented by a special symbol. And it sort of looks like the Canadian flag with the two bars at the ends, without the leaf in the middle. The position of the module symbol indicates the point the module is executed. So when you're calling these subprograms, so here we're taking in some input, and then we're calling calc_pay with the input and storing the result in total pay. And then there's a final output statement. But when we call this subprogram, that point in the program where you call it, that's where this goes in your flowchart. So a separate flowchart now must be constructed for this module. Now it's going to look very similar to a sequence. You may have decisions in there depending on what's in your subprogram, but the module flowchart will have the same or will have the subprogram name in the start terminal instead of start. So it will be start calc_pay or just calc_pay, and then you'll have the same sort of sequence that ends, and it will be end calc_pay. So what do each of the following symbols represent? Because we've added a couple new ones today. Remember, this is the terminal for start and end. This would be for input and output operations. This would be for your processes, like your calculations. For decisions, you have a diamond. For connectors, you have circles. And finally, you have a module for subprograms.